when you talk about the NRA and after a mass shooting that gun sales go up, I would argue that it's not necessarily that I think somebody's going to come take my gun from me, but I want the hope, and the hope that I have the right to protect myself.
That's Taya Kyle asking former President Obama about gun control. I remember watching that. I remember sitting at home. I was drinking and I was tweeting, and I was tweeting feverishly during that entire deal. One of the things I love that you did was you kind of more or less went into a bit of a statement. More so than just asking a simple question. And I feel like that was more so, you can tell me if I'm wrong, more so knowing that, you wouldn't be able to ask a counter question after he answered your question, which I largely think he dodged. So talk to me about that moment. What was going through your mind when you were asking a question, and what did you want to get from him?
It's interesting that you say that, because we were told, I think CNN was really invested in allowing us to have another question. But I think it's a tool that a lot of people use in President Obama's situation, and that is talk so long that the other person actually has no time to ask a counter question. I think that was a technique used with most people there. And I don't say that to say he's a bad person. I think that's a technique a lot of people use. So I did say a lot up front, and man, I got to tell you, my heart was pounding so hard before I asked that question, because I was going into an environment that I know is something a lot of people disagree on.
Yeah.
But I was going into it with a lot of survivors of people who lost someone because of an act of evil where they used a gun to kill them, right? But they were wearing like some big buttons, and not everybody was going to agree with me. And I knew that. And I think that emotionally charged environment was like, I got to go speak my mind, hopefully be tactful, and say what I believe, knowing that these people are more emotionally charged than most in disagreement with me, But I was glad to have the opportunity, and I think it was so hard to whittle it down to what's my main point going to be, because I think you and I probably have 20 points at least that we could talk a half hour each on when it comes to the issue,
Absolutely. I remember I was watching it, and one of the things I pulled away from it was I actually started to realize how much he really didn't know. He really honestly didn't have much in the way of information about firearm ownership and so any of that. So there was a shift that took place for me, that it went from a kind of, he is a purveyor of everything anti-gun because he hates guns, and he may, I don't know, but in the way he responded to your question, I could tell that there was a lot of party politics involved in his response, in that there was probably a lot of pressure on him from everybody on his side, like, you need to go hard against guns. And no matter what, don't show any weakness whatsoever. Don't try to show any understanding for their side or their positions. We need you to be firm on this.
Right.
And I think he tried to walk that line. What frustrated me the most was a lot of, in his response to you, was some blatant misinformation in terms of some of the things he said. And I knew for you, like, I saw you there, and I could almost see you saying, well, that's not entirely true in your mind.
Right.
But, you couldn't respond back. So it was kind of, I'm pretty sure that was pretty frustrating.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're sitting there, you're chomping at the bit, and I know one of the other people that asked the question, she was talking about being raped, and the answer that he gave back was, no one's taking that. You have your right to carry your concealed weapon. She was like, no. If she would have had the chance to say something back, she was like, no, time out. You're giving a platitude here that isn't true, or I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be asking this question. And so I think a lot of people were feeling that way. But one thing I did notice is that, I always try to listen to people and think, if I wanted to believe you, would I? And there's a certain charm and charisma and soft-spokenness. And the words, like, I think it was on the break, they were talking about, it sounds really good sometimes when people are saying, look, we just want background checks, We just want people not to die. We just want school shootings not to happen. We all agree on that. So we're all good. But when they say it, it just sounds like you get kind of like mesmerized into that. Yeah. And I did a lot of research before I did that. And some just totally non-scientific, but just asking some people who are very liberal and who hung out with a lot of liberal people. And one thing I realized is that, the verbiage is a big deal. So when somebody says to the, the ARs, the automatic rifles, and I was asking them, what comes to mind? Machine guns come to mind when you say AR, right? And mowing people down. And so the point was, why should that these people who opposed, other people having guns, they would say, why would anybody need that kind of a military grade, full auto weapon? And it's like, well, no, what about a hunting rifle?
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't even called like an automatic rifle,
Yeah.
the AR is something different than that.
Yeah.
But that's not what comes to mind. And I think that the rhetoric out there is very convincing that if you don't know anything about guns, that it is a huge problem. And then we got a lot of bad people using them. And you and I think differently because we see a lot of people who are very responsible who have them. And we know there are evil people who would do something bad whether they have a gun or not, and you can't protect against that.
There's so many things at play when we talk about having conversations like this, especially with somebody who doesn't agree with us, especially on live TV. Because what ends up happening, what I think in this country we've turned what's supposed to be conversation and debate into a form of entertainment. So instead of really trying to draw down to a conclusion and understanding, it turns into a gotcha, and it satisfies my narcissism, makes me feel great. But what did I really do? I didn't really do anything. And so I always implore people that the most important conversations don't take place on CNN, don't take place on Fox. They take place, and like you said, when you went out and you talked to different people who had different perspectives than you had, because there are no cameras, there's nobody watching, people's egos are put to the side, and we can really talk through this and get to a point where we say, you know what? Okay, I can understand that. They may not agree with you completely, but they can say, you know what? That makes me think about things a little bit differently than I did before. So now let me look into it a little bit further and educate myself further.
That is so 100% true. Yeah. I agree with you completely. And that is what I found. I found that, my heart rate was up a little bit talking to some of these people because I'm nervous about what they're going to say or if they're going to be ugly. And what I found was that I said some things like, oh, is that really how you thought about that? I can see why that would bother you, And then they would say, oh, really? That's true. I had no idea. Yeah. But instead, because like you said, some of the entertainment, debate type stuff that we see, we get these, what I would say, like little soundbite answers. And so have you ever watched somebody have, like I've had this discussion where I say, I'm not in support of this person. Mm-hmm. And I just want to ask you about this policy, right? But I clarify first, I'm not in support of this person, but ask you about the policy. And what I get back are soundbite answers about the person that I just said.
They have nothing to do with.
Right? Yeah. They won't talk about the issue at hand because we've gone past that. We're just bantering sound bites. Yeah. It's crazy.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it. I like I tell people all the time, I don't like doing hits. I'll do them, but I really don't enjoy them because they're usually 2 or 3 minutes, not even if that. And most of that 2 or 3 minutes is them asking me the question and then me having to give a response. And when we're talking about something as complex as the issue of firearms in this country, I have to unravel the information because if you don't, you're not really going to understand it. And then it's going to sound like you said. It's going to sound like I'm just spitting out talking points. And I kind of have to because the way it's structured, I got to get something out there as fast as possible. And it frustrates me because it's like I rather turn the camera on and let people just discuss, right?
Right.
It's going to be boring. It's not going to be very entertaining, but it'll be very effective. Very effective.
Right. Sorry, keep going.
No. I just don't know I don't know how that could happen on a national stage, which is why I revert back to the most important conversations are the ones about firearms you have with people in your life. Those are the ones. That's how we go about changing the perspective and then coming up with solutions. Because like you said, I agree with that. I don't want people who shouldn't have guns to have them. I don't want kids being shot up in schools. We just differ in the way we approach how to keep that from happening. So if you look at it differently and I look at it differently, okay, well, where can we find a common ground where, one, you're not violating my Second Amendment rights from the standpoint in that you're making me feel helpless. It's not just a principle that I just want to stand on for principle's sake. No, I really adamantly believe that my Second Amendment right keeps me safe. It allows me to do the things I need to do to protect my family and to protect myself against what our founding fathers prescribed the Second Amendment for in the first place. I'm getting on a soapbox now, but it's definitely.
True. If people would have this, I wrote this whole thing about brave conversations. That's what I consider them, brave. Yeah. Because you and I, we could easily surround ourselves with people that just agree with us. and never have to have those moments of like, oh, are they going to say something ugly that's going to make me not like them? Because if they just have facts and opinions, I'll still like them, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, of course. But if they're going to get ugly, then that might change my opinion of them. And so I think that's part of it, is being brave enough to talk to people. And I've watched different people have these conversations at dinner tables or restaurants or whatever, and people get so fired up that they want to interrupt and put their opinion in before the other person's even finished.
Yeah.
And what I found was that if you can just, it's not always easy, if you can just stop and just listen for as long as it takes for them to get through everything they feel and really think about it, you might come away with still having your opinion, but you might come away with a different perspective of even how to present your opinion next time based on how they feel. It's something I hope that we do more of with each other in this country, but who knows? Hey,
and so do I. And I hope that you continue to go around spreading the message as best as you can and as efficiently as you have been. And I thank you for joining me here. And, you know, if there's an open door policy, you can always come back. And
thank you.
We'd love to have you on the show again.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate what you're doing. Because like I said, it's I'm sure you get your share of people coming at you and being hateful and, you know, and saying that you're all kinds of things that you're not. But that's part of the challenge, is just to be like graceful and tactful in what you believe and not back away from it. So
absolutely.
Kudos to you.
Thank you very much. Well, you have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
And thank you very much for everything you've done.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It's another awesome episode of CM Live. Please join us again tomorrow for another even more awesome episode, if that's even possible. I'm Colion Noir, and I'm out.